Watchdog Asia. We are now in Brussels, and this concept of global investigative reporting network is very appealing to me. And of course, we have these three journalists here who have been pioneering or have been trying to draw up this concept. Kunda, what is Watchdog Asia in brief?
Well, as journalists, we were doing domestic reporting, within the national borders. And increasingly, we found that a lot of the stories we do have international ramifications across borders these days. Human trafficking, wildlife trafficking, environmental concerns, climate breakdown. And some of these needed the reporters to go much more in depth. And it was impossible to do it within a country. So we thought, how about setting up a team, a network that could work across borders on various stories, either two countries together or 4 or 5 countries together, or even countries around the world together. There are several models that have worked well. So we're just going to replicate some of those models for Asia.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But you have some experience in doing this cross-border collaboration on stories. Is it possible at all to institutionalize it?
Absolutely. And we have to so-called institutionalize it. But it also depends on what you call by institutionalization.
I mean, make it a regular feature, make it permanent.
Well, it'll be a regular feature, but it's very organic.
Mm-hmm.
It's story-centered, it's journalist-centered. We are not creating an organization to serve the purpose. Instead, we are creating an organic network that can be very flexible, that will vary depending on the need of the story.
Any stories that come to mind immediately?
Well, we've been talking about timber harvesting in the region, water, palm oil.
Yeah.
Since we're Europe, we've been hearing this ban on palm oil for the past 24 hours since I got here. Now, Europe's ban on palm oil is getting a lot of pushback and controversy in the region. So we, with our local knowledge and network, we can dig deep into the issues. We can go into the rainforest and to see what's the impact. We can also talk to the local traders and examine the impact of the policy. So it is a real need for cross-border collaboration.
You have some experience in doing a story on wildlife trafficking.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we just released a pangolins story last week. And we mobilized more than 30 reporters, editors, web designers in at least 14 countries and areas.
Wow.
And I can't keep up with counting. And we work together, produce this global story. It's being distributed in English, but also in local languages, in 2 versions of Chinese, in Thai, in Burmese, and going to be in Bahasa, in Nepalese. And we were able to connect the global story with a super local reporting and to produce a package.
One would guess you need a lot of money, a big budget to do this.
Well, we need money, but we get some initial funding. We get a lot of also pro bono contribution. And the way we do it, we were able to leverage a lot of resources from different media organizations.
So it's not that expensive to do really good global investigative reporting.
Well, I don't want to give the impression that you don't need money to do investigative reporting.
Yeah.
Doing good journalism needs resources. But what I'm advocating is a new way of doing work through sharing, through collaboration, and leveraging each other's resources. So we need money, but we can also spend the funds in a creative way and leveraging our resources.
So Syed, how do we go about setting it up in your plan?
Yeah, we're just taking baby steps. It was the idea which was created in 2017 when we all visited Germany on an invitation of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, that how can we support and strengthen investigative journalism in the region. And then a year after, we thought, like, let's give it some structure. That's how the concept of Watchdog Asia came, actually. And we have representation right now, I think almost 10 members from 9 different Asian countries, all senior editors, all newsroom leaders in their own organizations and in their own countries. For us, actually, we were all in Hamburg for a global investigative journalism conference, and we had a chance to sit down and understand and explore possibility of how we can work as a network, a robust network. So we all agree that we need to have a website which will be up soon, and we will share with the audiences in Thailand as well. And the website is open for feedback. We may have soon social media presence. The journalists in Thailand can join. Thailand is a critical country for the region because it connects all Asia. Like if we have to from India, if we have to go Europe or anywhere, the Thailand is the route we all take. And there are bilateral relationships as well. So it's going to be a resource center as well for journalists, young journalists in the region, including in Thailand. And we're sure we will find stories, important stories, connecting different countries like India, Nepal, Bangladesh, or for that matter, Thailand, Indonesia. There are big stories, cross-border stories, which are ready to be told. We just need to put extra effort. And we will certainly encourage the journalists in Thailand to build collaboration with us, to come forward, drop an email, and see how we can work with them more closely, as well as the networks, becomes stronger and widens in the region.
Kunda, in the wake of this collapsing media business model or even reporting model, how does Watchdog Asia fit in, or how does Watchdog Asia help to give some hope of the future of the role of journalists?
Well, legacy media doesn't really have the resources to fund cross-border journalism, investigative journalism, and even in-depth journalism within their countries. I mean, we're being reactive. We are, it's almost like a press release journalism that we're practicing now.
Yeah.
And in many countries, because of new controls, you cannot really do meaningful journalism anymore. So Watchdog Asia, by the fact that it doesn't have a center, it's a membership driven. It's totally decentralized.
Yeah.
It means it doesn't have a head, which means it is totally free to do and cover any country, despite whatever controls there may be within that country, from the safety of another country.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it'll replace. It'll bring out a new model or new formula of doing journalism that will bypass some of these very draconian controls that have come up in some of our countries.
So if it is a politically sensitive issue in a certain country, you can avoid the reporter of that country from being suppressed or mistreated by doing global journalism done by another country?
Well, yeah. I mean, you could have, let's say there's a story that's very controversial in India.
Yeah.
And Indian journalists might find it very difficult to write it within their country. Then you could have a collaboration between an Indian journalist and perhaps someone in the UK or US, and they would do it together. It would be on the net, which means it's not based in any country.
Yeah.
Network Asia will not have a license to produce anything, so a license cannot be revoked.
Yes.
So that'll give it, I hope, we hope, the freedom to operate and to cover things that are generally regarded as sensitive.
You also teach journalism. You also practice journalism. Technology, the new technology, may be the enabler of this project because now it's easier to collaborate through online channels, and also even shooting stories will be easier now. Does technology play a part in this project?
Oh, absolutely. We have more than 30 reporters, editors, distributed in Asia, in Africa, and in Europe. We only met once to brainstorm.
Yeah.
Other times we use Slack, we use online tools to communicate. It's very efficient. We have the managing editor who actually managed the project, who's based in Zurich. We have reporters in different cities. We have our web developers based in Kuala Lumpur. They are a group of very passionate, skilled, and committed young web producers and journalists. And then we work together and put it off. And we also have a core of editors like Kunda and myself and Wahyu in Indonesia that provide the guidance to younger reporters, and so it works. It's cost effective and is impactful. Yes. We put our product on Creative Commons, so it can be shared broadly. I think that's one reason why we're getting very wide distribution. I think we are experimenting a new model of producing journalism. So it's not everything, in the one house that I owned it, this is my copyright. And by sharing, you grow.
So they have what they call shared economy. Now you have shared journalism, right?
Absolutely. We also call it CC journalism, Creative Commons journalism, collaborative CC. Journalism, where you have super local journalism married with global journalism, and
covering global issues with local impact.
And global impact. Yes, because we're able to give global issues a human face.
Yes.
We go to the communities, talk to the people, and we can tell engaging and compelling stories. And so these issues are no longer abstract concepts, but it's closely linked to the land, linked to people, and that makes those stories compelling.
So this would be the first journalistic project of its kind in the world, probably?
In Asia, certainly, yes. We don't see any other network which is pan-Asia and devoted to the cross-border. We have a couple of networks which are doing a great job, but essentially this network is dedicated to watchdog reporting and it's pan-Asia. It's not limited to South Asia or Southeast Asia. So in that way, it's going to be a quite unique initiative. And as we're launching it, so our hope is only that we are able to run it in a very professional way so that it becomes an institution in itself and empowers a future generation as well. Because right now what we need also is this hope for future, as we see, not many journalists are coming forward to become, students are coming forward to become journalists, leave aside being investigative journalists. So we have to make sure that we have a next generation ready, which will take over as editors, newsroom leaders, entrepreneurs. Having a business sense also is very important. I think we were in Hamburg at a global investigative journalism conference. I think half of conference was dedicated to the running media houses, having the sense of how to build entrepreneurship among the journalists so that they are not kind of forced by the market pressures, left and right, and essentially to confuse newsrooms. So we think that's also important in a long term for this network. But essentially, this network will try its best to put a spotlight on important stories in the region and build a membership based on transparency, based on also a scope of stories. So whenever there's a need, it can be European nation, American nation. So we are open. I think we are in a very early stage, and that's all like that we have in the mind, that a vision, that how it will work, how it will transform in its own way the journalism in the region. Because individually, if you ask me, I think there's a great investigative journalism happening. When you look at Pakistan, despite of so many pressures, there's remarkable work happening there. In India, despite of a lot of pressures, I think there are hundreds of journalists who are doing amazing work at a village level, in states, producing remarkable stories. It's just those stories not getting enough global attention, perhaps because they're seen in isolation.
Yeah.
And I can see certainly that same thing in so many other countries in the region, that reporters are doing amazing work, outstanding work despite the pressures, but somehow the stories at the global, when they come at the global awards and global mega functions, Asian journalists are not good in marketing their stuff.
Yeah.
So we have to learn that and make sure that we present our best to the world, and we strengthen the watchdog reporting initiative.
Great. How do you propose to finance it?
Well, in the
You wanted
beginning,
to add something.
in the beginning, it'll need some seed money. But the medium you're using right now, this thing that you're doing
Yes.
with your iPhone,
Yes.
and you're doing a perfectly decent TV program, a studio talk show
Yes.
based on this. Look, you don't need a studio, you're just sitting here
Right.
doing it.
Right.
So nowadays, with this technology, it's really not that expensive anymore.
Yes.
To do the idea is to be exclusive, original, path-breaking, brave, and investigative. I think that comes with motivation, training, skills, experience. Money is really not the most important thing. I mean, what Professor Ying just talked about, the Pangolin project, that was done on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
It just needed the flexibility and the involvement of journalists around the world working for a common purpose.
What about thinking in terms of raising finance capital?
Oh, absolutely.
Thinking about it as a startup and open it up for public, members of the public, to invest in this kind of project.
Absolutely. I like the way you use the word startup.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've been doing. That's been our mindset.
Yeah.
We got a small funding from a foundation that's based in Hong Kong.
Yes.
We use that money and to produce an MVP, a maximum viable product, right? To showcase what we can do. We see it as a test of concept, test of methodology, to show that this approach is possible. And with the work that we're produced and with the reach we're getting, we think we can get more support and possible to make it viable. So that's exactly our approach. We're agile. We are bootstrapping the project. We didn't sit down to raise more money so that we can fund the project totally. We don't have enough money actually to fund the project, but it's enough to get us started and enough to connect a group of very passionate and dedicated people at different levels with different expertise to work on it.
This might be a great idea. This is called a new startup project that proposes to do global investigative reporting, inviting any interested parties, investors, or people with the good wishes, people who want to make sure that good journalism survive this tsunami of technology.
Right. No,
Is it okay with you if it's going to be a publicly funded project?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we are seeing the impact the ICIJ investigation had on Panama after Panama Papers, how it helped to change laws in so many different countries to stop corruption, and how money was, I think, billions of dollars of amount was recovered from the corrupt politician and businessman. We're looking at this story about implant investigation, how that saved actually so many patients, and they were able to file a case against the companies, and they got refund and all. So investigative journalism that way in Asia will also empower people, and I'm pretty sure that we're living in this information explosion, and people have so much information, and often they feel like, oh, we don't, we know everything. But that's where the beauty of investigative journalism comes, because it brings a lot of expertise, in-depth research, open data. Like I think almost 11 Asian countries have Right to Information Act, Freedom of Information Act facility available now, which means you have access to millions of open source documents, the budgets, the annual reports. All this is a gold mine for the journalists, and this information will help to empower people. And I'm pretty sure people eventually will value this journalism and will value this work and will come forward to support it, either through membership, either through donations. I think all there is endless possibilities of engagement. And it's already happening, and we are seeing the support in India, for example. We have like a couple of billionaires coming forward saying we want to set up a fund. They created a 1 million fund to help journalists to be independent. We will support you for the first 3 years. After that, you're completely on your own. So you need to sort out in the first 3 years how you're going to run it after 3 years. So that kind of possibilities are all there. And more than that, I think I can see a lot of collaboration with the academic institutes. Professors coming forward, they have already campuses and all. They can be like the torch houses for this network as well, where the editors can go have a discussion, see and contribute also in curriculum development for that matter. Whether we are teaching right kind of storytelling in journalism classes or not, or we are still 20 years behind the schedule. I see in a lot of global conferences now there's a dedicated session on how to teach investigative journalism, which is also important. So we are very optimistic, but we are just at the very beginning. We are taking first couple of steps to move ahead. I think, but with the support of a lot of stakeholders and with people as well, I think there's a really hope for good, empowering, powerful, in-depth, data-driven journalism.